Welcome to the Free Refills podcast, where we come together as youth leaders to discuss the realities of leading in youth ministry. We hope you leave refreshed, refueled, and re-energized to carry on in your ministry. My name is Jonny Radcliff, and we are still mourning the absence of Wayne Morgan until he gets back from his sabbatical. And again, I guess it's good he's doing it, but I miss him and I want him back. But in the meantime, it allows us to bring on someone else. And this is another colleague of ours, Keem Fares. Welcome, Keem.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. So since this is the first time you've been on the podcast, at least with me, I need you to explain yourself as if we've never met before. And I'm just like, hey, what do you do for a living? So why don't you have at it? Let everyone hear what you do for a living and all of that fun stuff.
I like how it was like, explain yourself. Like, why are you here? That actually it does kind of fit with what I do because I am not a youth minister. I am actually in management and finance, but I get to use some of those skill sets to empower and allow you guys to do ministry in the field, which I absolutely love being part of.
See, and I gave you your favorite title, Chief Financial Wizard. Is that the right term that I gave?
That is true, and we are working on making that official. I think
Okay.
wizard is much better than any other option.
Yeah, CFW. It's a real thing. Look it up. The name placard is in the mail. It's going to be great. So not only do you have expertise in finances and management and like everything opposite of me, you also do some graphic design / communications stuff.
I dabble, it's fun. I enjoy it. That's probably my only creative outlet at this point in life, and so I enjoy it and I appreciate the opportunity. So when I'm like, I don't know about your font choice, Jonny, and you're like, I don't really care. I get to say, but I'm a wizard. So
See, and that's what I wanted to bring up. I wanted to bring up font choices because there are plenty of people listening to this where they're basically their church's graphic department and they're like, yes, see, you get me. And for me, I'm basically a graphic designer forced into it. It wasn't my choice. But one question before we jump into the next thing, is there a font that you hate?
oh yes, there is. Only one? Do I only get one choice?
I'll limit you to 3.
Oh, okay. Well, it's pretty much encapsulated in just the one, papyrus.
Yes, I
And
was hoping you'd say that. Oh, it's the worst.
it is. And I'm actually partial to papyrus or anything Egyptian, but papyrus is just a font that should be completely eliminated from the database, from your mental choices. It is not cool anymore. There was a day back
Yes.
in the 80s, which we're going to be talking a little bit about things that happened in the 80s, I believe, with this podcast. So it's a good throwback, but just don't do it.
Yep. Everyone, eliminate papyrus from your ability. And you know what? I will say though, if you have like a scroll graphic, you can use it, but that's it. Anyway, graphic design aside, it is time for us to play everyone's favorite game. This is called GTKK. Stands for Get to Know Keem.
I can't wait.
I know you're so nervous. I'm so glad you're so nervous because that makes the game more fun. I'm going to ask you a question and you need to give your viewpoint on the topic. And we're going to start going where I always love to go. First question is this: salt and vinegar chips. Good?
Absolutely.
Or bad?
100%.
Okay,
Those are the only ones I go for.
Really? So this is your favorite?
In the US,
Okay.
yes. I don't
Cool.
think, I mean, we could get into some other non-US options, but in the US, that's always what we buy.
Why? Have you spent time abroad, Keem? Is that something you have done in your past?
I have a little bit. Yes, I've been blessed to do that. So it's a
Where have
joy.
you lived?
I grew up in Mexico. I've traveled many other places, but I also spent almost 15 years in the Middle East in Cairo, Egypt, where I saw a lot of papyrus.
And that's okay there, right? Because
There is appropriate.
there it's fine because it's one of the oldest, nations ever. So they can do what they want there when it comes to that for sure.
That's right.
All right, next. Pronounce this word. It is a maple sugary substance you would put on your pancakes.
Syrup.
Wait, can you say it again?
Syrup.
Syrup. Okay, that is incorrect, but that's okay. There are people who agree with you. We were looking for syrup, but there's no judgment here, right? Like this is your opinion, so I can't
That's
criticize,
right.
even though that's wrong. All right, next. People who wear socks to bed. Thumbs up, thumbs down.
After a certain age, it's absolutely appropriate. And if you're not at that age yet, you will know when you're there.
All right, good. I hope to be this young. This is great. Pineapple on pizza.
Ridiculous.
Mm,
Just stop it.
okay.
Shouldn't happen.
Okay. We're gonna put that as a bad take, but you know what? I respect your opinion, as I said clearly. Is cereal a soup?
In what world would cereal be a soup?
Listen, I don't
I'm so confused by that question.
I don't make the questions. I guess technically I do, but there is a theory out there that cereal is indeed a soup with milk being the broth, I assume.
Well, I am happy to join you today to debunk that theory
All right,
because cereal is not a soup. It's dessert in a bowl, is what
there you
it
go.
is.
Okay, I think I'm with you. I'm gonna enter my prayer closet for a week or two on that, and then I'll let you know.
Does that
Should
disappoint you? Do you think it
no,
should be a soup?
no,
Okay.
no. At some point, it's like people, come on, you're overthinking this. You know what I mean?
But you
Like
do like pineapple on pizza,
I
so
do. Yes. So again, weirdo. So don't trust my judgment whatsoever.
I just question your life choices.
So do I. So does my wife. Next, should chocolate be considered a vegetable?
I mean, where did you get these questions
I don't
from?
make the questions, as I said. I don't make the questions.
But you did
They're
select them, and that was the one you thought would be a good thing to discuss today. Is should
okay. Listen.
chocolate be a
Oh,
vegetable?
okay. Listen. Okay. Listen. I mean, the cocoa bean
Uh,
is basically a green bean, right? Like it's the same kind of pod, I assume. I don't know for sure. I think we're on to something here.
I just know that coffee is the nectar of the gods,
Mm,
and it eliminates all my troubles every morning for about 20 minutes.
till you get your next one. Yeah, I
That's
got
right.
you. So there you go. The correct answer is coffee. All right. Last one. Which would be better at ruling the world?
Me.
Dogs or cats? Dogs or cats?
Uh, Dogs would be better at ruling it because they would be kinder, but cats would be more efficient
Hmm.
because they get it done. So, in a world of cats and dogs, I'd probably be a cat.
I
So,
was gonna ask, but I was a little afraid. I'm glad you offered that information. Now we know. And I would just be a Labrador Retriever, just walking up to everyone and be like, "Hey, what's up? Look, can we hang out?"
yeah,
So I
that's probably why I enjoy spending time with you.
exactly that's why. Well, Keem, we're about to do a podcast here, and have you ever seen The Karate Kid?
Actually, I have. I grew up
Ah,
on it.
there you go.
Yeah. So I have not seen other things that come after that, but Karate Kid, absolutely. I actually made my son watch him when he was in his mid-teens, probably early teens. I forget exactly when. But I was like,
Okay.
this is part of, who I am. It's awesome. You'll love it. And he was like, this is lame. But
Oh man. Isn't that the worst when your kid doesn't affirm what you love? Oh, that's a shame. But I have actually seen The
Mhm.
Karate Kid. I was born in the 80s when it was made, so it's a little older than me, I think. But regardless, I was able to, as a kid, see it and be like, wow, this is the greatest action show ever. And now they have a show called Cobra Kai. It sounds like you
Mhm.
haven't seen that. Am I right?
You are right. I have
Okay.
not seen it. I've heard about it.
Okay.
I've seen
Well,
clips.
I have watched it as well. And I mean, Karate Kid is obviously better because it's the original, right? We got to do a
OG.
throwback. But
That's right.
today we have a cross pod.
Ooh, what's a cross pod?
I'm glad you asked. It's something I made up where we bring in the podcast of another podcast and we play it
Hmm.
on our podcast and we interact with it. So today's cross pod is actually from Steve Cullum, whose podcast is Student Ministry Connection. Now, I know what you're thinking. I've heard Steve Cullum on this before. That's correct.
I have.
Steve is a member of the National Network of Youth Ministries, where he is the Colorado State Coordinator, but he also is a fantastic smart smarty who has his own podcast. And
Very true.
and he also, see, this you're starting to see why we're doing this. He interviewed Travis Deans, also of NNYM. He is the Northeast Regional Coordinator, and he has some thoughts on how to run a Cobra Kai Youth Ministry.
Oh, that sounds interesting.
I was going to say, it's not centered around karate. It's centered around Jesus.
That's always a good choice.
That's good. Did I land it? Did it feel good? I felt good about that one, Keem. That was really good. Well, without further ado, we are going to play a clip from episode 117, Cobra Kai Youth Ministry, off of the Student Ministry Connection podcast. Here we go.
I want to challenge all of us in the youth ministry world that it's never good to be satisfied with where we are. I got 30 kids, I got 50 kids, I've got 100 kids. Everything is moving fast and good and great. But no matter how many students we have in our ministries, we know there are thousands more out there that nobody is reaching. And beyond that, even the kids that we have, we all know that the chances of them keeping their faith, continuing to walk in their faith, are not good once they graduate. And it's so I think it's always worth asking, what does it mean for me to keep moving forward in this ministry? What are the things that are going to help my students grow deeper? And one of the things I love about in Cobra Kai, they bring these kids in. It's very action oriented, right? There's not a lot of theory and a lot of talk, and there's not a lot of sitting down and listening. There's a lot of doing, right? Yeah. And when we think about teaching God's word, unfortunately, and I'm guilty. I'm as guilty of this as anybody. There's a lot of let me tell you a bunch of stuff, and you sit there and listen, right? There's not near enough. Hey, let's do stuff. Let's do some things. There's not near enough action. And for me, that's been a bit convicting. If I were to go back and be a youth pastor at a church again, I mean, I've been thinking, what would I do differently? How would I take the truths of Scripture and put action with them in a way that feels like I'm doing something? Like those kids, they could measure they could see themselves growing in their skills and abilities and what they could do. Do our kids in our churches, do they have that sense that, man, I am growing, I'm gaining the ability to accomplish things for the kingdom of God? And I don't know that that's always the case. I think that too often we're spoon feeding information, and there's just not enough. Let's get out and do this. And I'm sure there are youth ministries that are. They're doing that. They're doing that for sure. But I think it's just, that's one of those lessons for me, that what is it, as when we read the Gospels, I mean, Jesus did quite a bit of teaching, right? He definitely did that. But I mean, he took his disciples on the road, and there was a lot of action, right? Mm-hmm. There was a lot of, the healings and deliverances, and there was just all of the interactions with people. There was, Jesus was not a, hey, let's sit around and talk kind of guy. He was a, let's go do stuff, and I'll talk about it as we do.
It's true.
Those are some of the thoughts that have been rolling around in my head.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've thought for a long time too that I think, it's like you said, it's not bad to sit around and have discussions about the Bible and dig into the Bible together.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
And all these different things that happen in a youth group. But what's the purpose behind it? Where are you going with it? Mm-hmm. And I've often felt like maybe it's a better approach if we approach our youth groups as a training ground, rather than, just a holy huddle sort of approach. And I kind of feels like the same sort of thing. Like, the guys in Cobra Kai are training their students to go and compete.
Yeah.
It's all for the purpose of going and doing, like you said, action oriented. And so yeah, it seems like it could be a really good approach for our youth groups as well.
And this is what I love about, I know you and I are both friends with folks over at Dare to Share. and this is one of the things I love about their ministry is that, they have an engine that drives their ministry, right? Evangelism for them is the engine that drives discipleship, right? So we a lot of times we're discipling kids, but there's nothing, we're not training them for anything, right? But when you train them for evangelism, when you train them, hey, you've heard the gospel, we're going to go out and tell people, we're going to go out and share the gospel with people. All of a sudden, that, Greg Steer says, that creates a need for understanding and knowing the scriptures like never before, right? Because this guy, they asked me a question, how do I answer that question? Or they had this objection or this thing they said that I don't know, what do I do, right? And so kids, and this goes for all of us, we all value information a lot more when we desperately need it. As I heard Duffy Robbins say, you don't really care about instructions for assembling or using a rifle unless you're in combat, right? If you're in combat,
Yeah.
You want to know everything there is to know about that rifle. And I think our faith is the same way. When we put our faith out there, when we're taking it out there in the streets, in our schools, in our workplaces, then we're going to want to know everything there is to know about making our faith authentic and real and true and growing. And so you need an engine to drive this car. That's one of the things I appreciate about Dare to Share and other ministries too, that they give youth ministry an engine that I think is powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. So you talked about in your blog post 5 different ways that we can be a Cobra Kai ministry. So I'd love to just kind of hit those 5 different topics and kind of discuss them a little bit. So you said the number 1 way is to go deeper, all about disciple making. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Okay. So Cobra Kai had, they had the 3, the strike hard, strike fast, no mercy. So there's 5 things here. These kind of flow out of the National Network of Youth Ministries over the last several years. We've just been kind of identifying things that we think really would help youth ministries. And the first is grow deeper. And what we mean by that is, hey, if you're a youth leader, make sure before you are discipling students, make sure that you are being discipled well. And again, I've been guilty of this. I've been guilty of just, I've got this, I'm good to go. I'm on, I can fly on my own here, but we all need our Timothys, but we all need a Paul, right? We all need to be being discipled so that we can disciple others well. So growing deeper, you're not gonna take kids anywhere that you have not gone, right? And we all know that. But it's an important concept that bears reminding, right? If I want to help kids go deeper, I need to continually be going deeper.
Yeah, absolutely. You need your Miguel and you need your Mr. Miyagi.
That's right. That's it.
There you go. Okay.
But not John.
So
Grease,
yeah, probably not John Grease. Yes, pick your disciplers well.
That's
make
right.
Sure that and see where they have gone and make sure that that's where you want to go as well.
Yeah.
I think that's so often. I think it's an aspect, unfortunately, that I don't think we do it on purpose, but we do that so many times where we neglect discipleship.
Yeah.
Discipleship for ourselves, like you said, but also making sure that we're actually helping students get closer and closer to Jesus. But also, like the other youth leaders that we're working with, are they growing in their discipleship as well? Yeah. So that's number 1.
So
number 2 you said is
get stronger. Yep. And what we mean by that one is, there's a strength that we all need in and of ourselves. But when we say get stronger, we're thinking, we hope that you'll be strong in your faith as an individual. However, there is a strength that we gain from being connected to others that is unparalleled. It's like that thing of if you take a workhorse and you attach some weight. A workhorse can pull 8,000 pounds, right? But if you put 2 workhorses together, you think, okay, they can pull 16,000, right? Actually, they can pull a lot more. They can pull around 20. If they're trained well, they can pull around 30. So, as we connect with others, there's a strength that you gain that is unparalleled to anything that you could be on your own. And so, we hope that you have a team within your church, but you also need a team outside of your church, because there are times when you're going to need outside perspective. Hey, this is going on. What do I do? This thing happened to us. Would you celebrate with me? Right? Nobody can understand the challenges you face or celebrate the victories you have like a fellow youth worker. And so there's to be stronger in ministry requires being well connected with others, right? It's the whole thing that lions don't kill animals in a herd. They kill the ones that have been separated from the herd, right? I don't know if that's true. That's that's one of those things. That's one of those things we always say, though, and it sounds good, and it sounds true. No, but being isolated makes you vulnerable, right? And so the more connected you are, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. And we see that played out in the show as well. I mean, like when the kids are separated, that's when they get taken out. All of a sudden they band together. They're able to stand up, but also you see the different dojos banding together.
That's right.
Even in the midst of the differences they have with each other, all of a sudden they come together and they're so much stronger. So I think there's definitely a parallel there with us as well.
For sure. Yeah.
So number 3.
Yeah, that one we this is called Connect Wider. And what we mean by that is, as you connect with other youth leaders in your community, and as you get to know other people from other churches, you start to discover something. You discover, number one, wow, God is doing a lot more in my city or in my community than I realized. And number two, you realize, whoa, the needs out there are a lot bigger than I ever imagined. And number three, you discover resources that you didn't know were out there, ministries, organizations, social service kind of things. You discover things that you didn't know were there as you get to know people around your community. And so we want to encourage youth leaders, listen, not only should you connect with other youth workers, but get to know your community better, get to know what's out there, and get the bigger picture. One of the stories that I love is right there in Colorado, Steve, in Arvada, there's a youth pastor named Morgan Marshall, and she wanted to understand the scope of the community. What is the big picture look like here? And she called all of the schools around the area and discovered there were 14,000 students. And she presented that to the other youth leaders in the network. Hey, let's start praying for these 14,000, and I really, I love that story because it's such a great challenge. I work with youth leaders in New York City. There's 1 million teenagers in New York City, right? And that's an extreme example, but whatever that number is for your city, your community, you should know what that number is. Where I live, the county that I live in, 10,000 is the number. There's 10,000 students in 6 school districts here. That is the mission field. Now, I know that I can't reach all those kids. No one church can reach all of them, but we have FCA here. We have Young Life. We have a ministry called Teens for Christ. We have all these churches. We have great resources in this area, in this community, but I wouldn't know that if I hadn't built relationships with other people and gotten to know people. So we want to encourage you, connect on a wider scale, because it will open your eyes to the mission field that's out there.
Yeah, that's
and resources that are out there
huge
to reach it.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll just say as well, like, we at National Network have some resources to be able to help you out as well. If that seems really overwhelming, like you're like, how do I even count how many students I have in my area? We've got some resources that we can help you. We'd love to be able to do that with you and teach you how to map your community, but also kind of walk alongside that with you in that process.
Yeah, and it's important. That's really good you mentioned that, Steve, because we have a tool where we can tell you in a matter of 3 minutes how many students are in your city. And so it's really easy to find that number out, and it's good to know.
Yep, absolutely. So moving on to number 4, reach higher.
Yeah. And this is the one that you would think this might come first, but the reason we put it in this order was, as you let your vision get bigger, as you let yourself see the bigger picture, what happens is it gets overwhelming, and you realize, God, there's no way that I or any of us can do this on our own. We need you. The needs of your community should drive us to our knees, right? The needs of our community should drive us to our knees. As we look at the number of students that are out there, as we look at the issues that they're facing, drug use and family disintegration, and just all the things that students are going through, all of those things should drive us to our knees, and we should be praying hard and recruiting others to pray hard for the students, the youth of our communities, of our cities. Imagine every church having people dedicated to praying for the youth in your city, in the schools, in your community. I mean, that would be awesome. And I don't think we feel the need to pray as hard as we should until we have this bigger vision, until our eyes are open to, wow, this is way beyond what my church could do. This is way beyond what I can do, but it's not way beyond what God can do, right? It's not beyond God's. Yeah. There's no kid out there beyond God's reach, and so as this progresses, I think it takes us to a place where we're just like, God, if you don't do something, it can't happen. And we find ourselves in a place of dependence and reliance, and youth pastors are kind of entrepreneurial, right? We're really good at relying on our own ingenuity, and that comes in handy a lot of times. But it's not good when we rely on ourselves rather than relying on God.
Yeah. And I think, like you said earlier, I mean, sometimes we do get, to ourselves and everything and focus on our, own ministry and that sort of thing, get too focused inwardly. But I think on the other side of things, we get too focused on action within our group and trying to do stuff, but how often do we really sit down and just talk to God about it? Before we go and start putting plans on paper and before we start moving forward and everything, how much are we actually dedicating to our daily time, our weekly time, praying with other people? I think sometimes it feels like, oh man, I would like to pray, but I got too much to do. Or man, like I don't want to waste time praying. And that's a horrible thing for me to say out loud. But if I'm honest, that's actually what I'm thinking a lot of times. Man, I got to stop in order to pray. And I don't want to stop. Yeah. I want to keep going.
Yeah.
And what could we do if we actually just dedicated a chunk of our day, a chunk of our week, everything to just praying?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that brings us to number 5.
All right, so that leads us to the last thing. But actually, for me, again, this is like the fuel in the gas tank, right? This is the part that I'm like, okay, I want to rev the engine right here. Going further, as I look around my youth ministry and I see kids that know Jesus, I see kids that have a church family, I can't help but think of all the kids out there that do not have a church family, and have that's one of the words that kids who love church, kids who love youth group, youth ministry, they talk about it as a family, right? But think about all the kids that don't have that sense of family. They have nowhere to go where there's people that love them, people that care about them, people that they know my life matters. And so, for me, the fuel in the engine and the gas tank is there are kids that need Jesus. And if we have a passion for Jesus, I mean, honestly, passion for Jesus is that's the real rocket fuel right there. But if we have passion for Jesus, you can't help but to be burdened. You can't help but to be passionate about other people having that same hope, that same desire, that same burden, or not the same burden, but the same experience of knowing there's a Savior, of knowing there's a God who loves you. You walk around and you see people out and about, and the more passionate you are for Jesus, the more you see people as those lost sheep, right? And Jesus said, a shepherd leaves the 99 to go find the one. And so, I'm not saying I'm not saying to youth pastors, hey, abandon your kids and in your church and go find other lost kids. I'm saying every one of the kids in your church, they know lost kids. And if every one of them was equipped, if every one of them was, if you built this passion into them, if you inflamed this fire in them, there are kids that they can reach that you and I will never reach. You and I, Steve, we could walk into a school and try to reach kids and have some success, but there are kids that the students in our ministries, that they are the best people to reach, right? Other students. And so, we want to encourage you pastors, listen, one of the best things that you can do to help your students grow in their walk with Christ and to go deeper in their walk with Christ is for them to want to share Jesus with others. It will more than anything else, it will help them to walk more. You can't tell people about Jesus without relying on the Holy Spirit. You can't tell people about Jesus without understanding your identity in Christ. You can't tell people about Jesus without understanding why we believe what we believe. You can't tell people about Jesus without having a good sense of theology. Why do I believe in God? Who is God? What are we even talking about here? What is salvation, right? What is holiness? There's all these things. You can't, if you want to tell people about Jesus, you've got to know those things. And so, but telling people about Jesus makes all of those things feel urgent and relevant, and I need to know these things.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That's so good. It's so good. And this may be a far stretch, I'm not sure, but connecting it with Cobra Kai, I mean, you see that even the different dojos have different purposes they're going after.
Yeah.
Whether it's just to build up their own name or whether it's to help themselves, be a better person and be a better citizen.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily discipleship and Jesus and everything, but they have different purposes. And the ones that are really going after what is more important, they're wanting to do that more than just build up their own name and build up the name of Cobra Kai versus, actually be a better person, be balanced, and all the different things that karate can bring to your life. And so I think there's an importance there of like, what's that purpose? What's that thing? And yeah, hopefully your gospel advancing, like you say, is like you're bringing the gospel there. That's the purpose of why you're going out, why you're reaching more people, is because Jesus needs to be known among your peers and the students in your community.
And we're back. What a lovely
great
time.
conversation.
Great conversation by two great guys that I have the privilege of calling colleague. But just to go over what Travis was talking about, man, I don't know if you noticed this. Travis is a chill guy, but like when you get him talking, like the fire was coming out. I was listening to it and I was just like, whoo, he's on that soapbox. I love it because this is the kind of stuff that really hits home for him. So he talked about the 5 different things. And the first one is this: to go deeper, to get stronger. That's number 2. Number 3, connect wider. Number 4, reach higher. And number 5, go further. So let me kind of rehash that play by play. So to go deeper, that's step 1, your own personal walk. As he said, you can't take people where you haven't been. We're familiar with this.
So
this
true.
is good. To go deeper, absolutely. Next one, to get stronger. So to connect with those around you, the ones who are already in your life, to open up and to really start sharing life. That was the big takeaway I took from that second point. The next one, connect wider. Find the people in the community, the resources that are around you. Fourth one, pray. Pray like it matters. Pray like you mean it. And the fifth one, go further. That's to share Jesus with those around. So those are the 5 ways that you can have a Cobra Kai Youth Ministry. But I
Which
tell
is
you
what
what,
we all want.
absolutely, yes, much more Cobra Kai and Jesus. So Keem, what stood out to you on this?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Johnny. So, one thing that stood out was just when Travis was talking about how important it is to help students go further, and that is really about training. It's not about programming, it's not about what happens in that weekly meeting, but it's kind of more of a lifestyle. And to keep in mind why we're doing that and why we're encouraging young people to be trained in the way of the gospel. And this was really modeled for me by my dad. He was a youth pastor first and is now a senior pastor, but he has had a lifelong practice of bringing younger men alongside him and training them for ministry. And it's a beautiful thing, it's powerful. So that was one thing that I really appreciated hearing in this conversation with Steve and Travis, was just how important training is. Well, what do you think? Have you
So
experienced that?
yeah, same thing. As he was talking about it, one thing that to that end, where he was talking about how when you're training someone in karate, you can see these skills you're doing, right?
Hmm.
Like I'll
Right.
I'll speak in Karate Kid terms, the wax on, the wax off, right? And she's like, why am I doing this? And all of a sudden, Mr. Miyagi's just like, "Zick, zick, zick," and he's like, whoa, blocking it all. Like just having the skills that you can actually point to and look at and be like, oh, this is why we
Yes.
do that.
Yeah. And when they
And
come naturally.
yes, yes.
Hmm.
Like, could we make the way of Jesus natural for teens to the
Oh,
point
that's
where
good.
they have the skills and they're using them? It's not just
Hmm.
another thing we're using to entertain them or try to convince them it's important. So
Right.
that gave me some food thought. I was kind of reflecting over our own youth group, just being like, huh, okay, what am I just spoon feeding information or am I actually giving skills that they're going to use in their walk with Christ? So, little conviction out of the gate right there, Travis. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, that was good. That was good.
What else did you
Uh,
have?
I also really appreciated how Travis focused on connecting across community lines and outside of our own space. So, our own ministry space, whether that's with students or in our church or even with a specific group of people, but that when we step out of that community and are willing to go across other lines, it just opens up so many opportunities. And not only opportunities that benefit us and our ministry, but ways that we can benefit other people and their ministry. So it goes both ways. And that was really cool. Of course, that's what we're all about with networking. That's why we do what we do every single day. But a
Yeah.
piece, well, go ahead. What are your
I
thoughts on that?
I was just gonna say it when we get into our routine and the people we always see and we're kind of pressed on every side, right? We kind of hit our routines, the people that we're with, it feels like a lot of extra work to be like,
Mm.
okay, I'm gonna be around different people. I'm gonna make new relationships with people that I don't normally come across. But the
That's
reward,
not my favorite thing to do, by the way.
really, not so
It's
much, huh?
no, it's
Hmm.
not. But when I do it, then I'm glad I did because
Exactly.
exactly what Travis was talking about. So
Even
it's
if
worth
you have
it.
the personality of a cat, it's very important, right?
I didn't say I have the personality of a cat. I said I would rule like a cat.
Okay. If you're a ruler like a cat, make sure you're hanging out with some of the dogs across the way. Oh, that'll
That's right.
preach. Come on now. Come on. What else stood out to you?
Well, as Travis was talking about that, he mentioned the importance of knowing just what is out there in your community. And he specifically referenced knowing how many young people are in his community and the fact that he knows there are 10,000 students in his area. And he said, that's my mission field. So it goes beyond just the students that are in your program or in your church or in your school, that whatever it is, who your regular group of students are, it goes beyond that. And just to keep that mentality of going wider so that we are more effective in ministry in reaching more students with the gospel, not only the ones that come to us, but the ones that we can go to as well.
Absolutely. Imagine if we were measuring the students who aren't there as opposed to the
Mm.
students who are there. And that can
Ooh.
get overwhelming. And let's be real, it's not up to one church to reach a whole area. It's going to take the whole body working together to do it. And that's the heart of NNYM. That's why we do what we do. We know that we can't do it alone because we are better together.
Better together.
See, better together. So that's why we, as we enter this new phase of youth ministry, you know, the next however many years, we're pretty convinced it starts with working together across churches to tackle the schools, to tackle the communities as one body of Christ. And to know the resources, the people who are like-minded that are also trying to do it, so crucial to that.
That's great.
Well, I tell you what, as we're shutting this thing down, if you heard the podcast and you're like, hey, I want to know how many people are in our area, how many students are within the vicinity of our church, we have an email for you. We'll help you set this up. We promise. The email is podcast@nnym.org. I'm going to say that again. podcast@nnym.org. You can email that to get the ability to know how many kids are in your area. You can also shoot some topics and ideas, or maybe you have someone that you want interviewed on this. It never hurts to throw an idea out there. But be sure to like and subscribe across all venues where podcasts are found. It really helps. And if this helped you, please pass it along to someone else that you think it could help as well. Well, thanks again for spending time with us. We hope that this is something that's going to fuel you up for ministry. And in the meantime, I'm Jonny Radcliff.
And I'm Keem Fares.
And we hope that you have an amazing day. Bye.